And we are live.
Is that me?
That's
Yes.
you, Craig. Go, go, go.
What? Are you starting already? Okay. I'm going to close my mail app. Don't want any noise from it. I thought we were waiting for people to join us before we...
No, we go. Let's go. Boom, boom.
Okay. This is the CrackBerry 10-year anniversary podcast, episode 2 for Monday, February the 20th, 2017.
Hey, everybody. The CrackBerry Podcast is back. This is the second episode in our 10th anniversary series and our first one in video. That's us. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to see everybody.
Video.
Our first podcast was like super professional and in audio only, and we had an amazing guest join us, which was Steve Sestouli from BlackBerry Mobile. So for our second podcast, we're not going to try to up it. We're going to do like the exact opposite and just have a fun community discussion, the good old days of BlackBerry. So let's start with some introductions. I'll go last. First up, Blaze, editor-in-chief of CrackBerry.com, my boss.
That is me. How's everybody doing this evening?
You just love hearing that, I can tell.
I know. It's good.
And Craig Johnston, the man with the velvety smooth voice. I won't even try to match it. And the original co-host of the CrackBerry Podcast, going back to episode 001 in many, many years ago.
Did we already do this in 2007?
I think it was 08. We didn't start immediately because we would have met in, I think, May 2007. And then it was probably, we just didn't launch a podcast like day one, right? I think it was probably 2008. I mean, I could pull it up during the show at some point. I'll tell you what the date was of our first one. Or Blaze, you can find it.
It was late 2017, maybe.
Wow.
I mean, in 2007.
2007. It was, or 2008.
It's funny because I went back and listened to some of the old podcasts when we put them on Google Play Music, and I was like, wow.
I can't bring myself to do that. Were they good or really horrible?
They varied, definitely. And there were some really good ones and some really horrible ones.
They varied. I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I know more about podcasting these days, which is get to the point quick or we're going to lose beyond minutes, which we never caught on. So on that note, my name's Kevin Mitchell, founder of CrackBerry. I have to read my own notes to remind me what I do around here and other things. Out of retirement and back on the CrackBerry scene to celebrate 10 years of CrackBerry. I absolutely cannot believe it is our 10th anniversary this month, which is ridiculous. The exact date is February 26th, which is coming up fast, but we've been celebrating all month long, and I have a feeling we'll continue that into March because why not? 10 years doesn't happen all the time. And I would think this episode, the goal is to celebrate in true style and actually revisit, some of the early days of CrackBerry, some of our favorite BlackBerry moments of the past 10 years. Obviously, BlackBerry's history goes back much longer than 10 years, but, we'll focus on the 10 that we've been around for at least. And, I want to hear Blaze. I think the audience and the community wants to hear, like, how did you guys do all these things? I see we've just been joined by Renee Ritchie. Renee, are you just checking in or does something sound bad on your end?
I just wanted to make sure I could get a backup recording for you.
Craig's got one, so I think we're all good.
Okay, I'm going to drop off then.
Okay, thanks for visiting.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I see a CrackBerry book behind you there.
That is a CrackBerry book. That'll be one of the topics for this show. But I want to start today with a couple of updates and news announcements before we start just reminiscing of the good old times. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I already mentioned our first 10-year anniversary podcast, which if you have not listened to it, you should go because it was probably one of our best podcasts ever. And we had Steve Sestouli on the show to talk BlackBerry Mobile. And of course, that's exciting because in less than a week, I think we are 5 days and 16 hours away as we record this from the BlackBerry Mobile press event that'll take place in Barcelona, Spain at Mobile World Congress, where they will unveil the BlackBerry Mercury, which we are all uber excited about. This is a Android-powered BlackBerry that's got that nostalgia factor, kind of harkening back to the classic form factor. This is a classic of BlackBerry, but it looks pretty dope, and I've been really excited for it, and I think a lot of people have. So we will be taking our coverage to Barcelona shortly. I leave on Tuesday, so what's this? This is Sunday evening as we record this. I'm here for less than 48 hours. I'm on a plane to Barcelona, and we will be covering the hell out of the launch out there, or the press event. And we're also going to be having a little CrackBerry celebration on Friday night. We're doing a CrackBerry meetup, 10th anniversary party, which on that note, Blaze, did Michelle order us like a fancy cake in the shape of a CB logo or anything? Because we got to get on that.
I don't know if she ordered a cake or not.
I think you were the one who said it's not a party if there's no cake. So we need to get a cake going.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Barcelona. I'm pretty sure we can find something in a pinch.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. We have some local CrackBerry, BlackBerry fans in Barcelona coming out for the event. We have some people from around the globe who are going to be attending Mobile World Congress, and they are, going to come obviously to the meetup also. I think we have a couple people traveling in just for the event on their own dime, which is really cool. And there's something that I've been so excited to announce, and we're going to announce it on the website, on the CrackBerry website, probably tomorrow on Monday. But for those listening now, it's the sneak peek and the exclusive thing. And we totally pulled an Oprah Winfrey type of moment. And with the support of BlackBerry Mobile, who said, man, it'd be great to make sure we have some CrackBerry fans in attendance at the launch event and in Barcelona to celebrate with you guys the 10th anniversary. So we out of the blue reached out to 10 CrackBerry members who are getting trips to Barcelona, airfare, hotel, all covered. And they're going to be there with us next week, or later this week, I should say, to celebrate the 10 years of CrackBerry celebration. So
Awesome.
It was fantastic. And there's nothing more fun I think I've done in the last 10 years than send out those emails and then get the responses from people who are like, you've got to be pulling my leg. And, it's super exciting. So we'll announce, who those members are in that this week. Everything's been crazy getting the logistics taken care of. But we're going to have a really good CrackBerry crew in Barcelona for Mobile World Congress, which is awesome, and for the Mercury launch event. The other surprise, I think, well, maybe less exciting than that, but still pretty exciting, is if you can't be in Barcelona for the event, CrackBerry's powering the live stream coming out of the launch event. So we have, a crew on hand there who's going to be powering the live stream on, Saturday evening, 7 p.m. Barcelona local time. I think I can't remember about noon Eastern, maybe. I can't remember, around that time. But you can head to crackberry.com/bbmobilemwc 2017. That's long, but don't worry, we'll link it up everywhere. And you'll be able to watch the live stream. So even if you can't be there, you will be able to be there. And it's going to be awesome. Don't want to miss it.
Very, very cool.
Anything else exciting since our last podcast? Oh, just a reminder, if you haven't entered to win an IOU for a BlackBerry Mercury yet, go to crackberry.com. You'll find the link at the top of the site to enter to win, and go enter for your chance to win. It takes you 1 minute, and you could be among the first to win this device, which is awesome. And I think the last thing before I shut up for a few minutes, since our last podcast, we have a new blogger on the site, and his name is John Chen, CEO of BlackBerry. It's pretty funny. After all these years, he reached out and he's like, I'd like to do a letter to CrackBerry. So we set him up with a username on the site and posted a really cool letter to the community from him, kind of clarifying, what the new BlackBerry is all about. And, also dropping the note that, stopping hardware for BlackBerry was a very difficult decision for him. And obviously we're very excited that there's continuation with BlackBerry Mobile and, covering most of the globe with some other partners in certain other regions. But that was cool. And if you go back to that post, originally I didn't think he was going to do any comments on the site, but I gave him his login info and he's been actually responding to some comments. So I wouldn't start private messaging him on the forums, but you never know. If you're on CrackBerry, you may see John Chen pop up here and there from time to time. which is also pretty cool. So much has happened in like the 3 weeks of February that we've been back in business here. It's been pretty interesting. Crazy few weeks. So with that, I think it's time to reminisce about the good old days.
The good old days when we were all younger.
I don't know. It's funny. You look back at all the photos and you see how like people change, and everybody goes through their phases. Obviously, I've gone from like, I've been long hair freaky Kevin to clearly like hopped up on Red Bull and full throttle, and you know, my face explodes like this much bigger from the water and salt retention to, I don't know. I think maybe I look younger right now. I can't decide, but it's funny. 10 years is a long time though.
It is.
Obviously, you know what we should start with is we don't have Adam Zeiss on the show today, and who wanted to make it. We're also going to have Chris Umiastowski join us, who was planning to make it up until about 30 minutes ago, because I guess it's a holiday tomorrow in parts of Canada. I think it's President's Day in the USA.
Yeah.
But he had some family stuff that his kids would not let him off the hook to come join us, which is understandable. So he sends his regards, and Adam Zeiss sent us a letter. He said, well, who should read it? Maybe Blaze. Do you want to read it? Or maybe like Craig?
I don't know. What
Maybe
about
Craig.
You told me to close all my apps, and now I don't
Okay,
have the email in front of me.
I want to try to do my best Adam Zeiss. Hey, Crack Team. That's not a good Adam Zeiss at all. But hey, Crack Team. I'm super bummed that I couldn't make the show. Unfortunately, life has me quite tied up at the moment, so I wasn't able to make it tonight. I'm honored that Kevin even asked me in the first place. Hey, come on. And I'm extremely grateful for all those amazing years of CrackBerry. It's insane to believe that it's been 10 years, though. It's been a long road, and what better way to celebrate than with an amazing new device? I think I might actually find my way back to BlackBerry with the Mercury too. I've been sorely missing a physical keyboard. All the best to everyone in Crackland, and thanks for letting me get the last word in. I hope to be around for the 15-year anniversary, in which case I'll definitely make time for a podcast. Stay well. All the best. And Adam's been busy. He's got a new job closer to where he lives. It's called Shark, SHARKK, and they manufacture lots of stuff in tech. They've got, lots of mobile accessories and things like that. But they, you can find, you can hit up their website or find their products on Amazon, and he's taking everything he learned at Mobile Nations, and he's been leading their marketing and social media and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. So miss Adam, but love that he's on to doing some cool things. This dead air is not good, Blaze. You should always be talking if I quit.
But you never usually stop talking,
we're out of practice, and I'm trying to be better. So
while I was listening there, I was getting some old BlackBerry.
7290?
7290. This was the very first color BlackBerry.
That was my first BlackBerry. I never had one before that.
Just look how it fits in your hand. Look at that. Amazing.
It has about 9 days of battery life.
Yeah, probably longer. And you can see I used it a lot because you can see the fake chromas rubbed off there. See?
Oh, yeah.
I use this thing a lot. But probably the one that I ended up using most was this one.
Oh, 97.
Oh, yes. Got one too. Very good.
9700, Craig, was your favorite. Actually, why don't we start there? Like, Craig, as many podcasts as we've done, I don't know if I ever got the story of how you fell into, the world of BlackBerry. And why don't we start with you? Because I think that's a cool story for today.
Sure. I was probably walking, but I was working at a law firm in New York City, and I was the network manager doing networking stuff. And
so then we're computer related, like making sure the computers and stuff all had access. And then
we ran a Banyan Vines network. For all the people on listening will understand what that is. And then we moved to Windows NT later on, but it started at Banyan. So I used to also get involved in the PDA stuff. So the Palm Pilots and the Palm 7, which was the first connected PDA. Do you remember that phone?
Yeah.
It was really fun. It looked like a Palm, but a big, huge antenna you flipped up. If you remember that. I'm going to take my headphones off because I can hear myself.
Okay.
And so then that was the Palm 7. Of course, it was very limited, extremely limited, in fact, because you had to do stuff mostly offline, and the bandwidth was really low. And then these guys called Research in Motion came along, and they showed us this BlackBerry, the very first one, the 850 was the first one that I had, which was the little pager style one.
Do you have any of those kicking around?
I don't.
No.
I've got an 857, but I couldn't find it right now. I was scratching through my drawers. And so I used an 857 after that. But I wanted to go back to the 850. The 850 came after the 950, which was the first one. And the 850 was another carrier. And the battery used to last for weeks on those things. It was 2 AA batteries. Used to last forever. But it had a really small little screen, and we used to sit down with RIM, and they used to tell us they used to calculate battery usage by bytes. They used to know exactly how many bytes they could send on the battery, and it was amazing. And then the 857 came along, and of course I was running a BlackBerry server by then. So that was about 1999, 2000 when I started in the BlackBerry space. So that's my start off story with BlackBerry.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it was fitting to start with you because you preceded Blaze and I by many years.
Totally.
It's funny, I'm going back to my first. I'm having flashbacks now that predate CrackBerry even, and I think my first experience or introduction to it was, I was still in university doing business school. I was doing like finance and entrepreneurship were my 2 majors. And one of the entrepreneurship courses I was doing back in 2002, I guess, it was all around business planning. And you spend the entire semester doing a business plan, and then you present it to and treating it for real, like you're actually trying to launch the business, which was pretty cool as a student. And then if after that you present it to the class, and if the school likes you, they actually fly you around to all these international business plan competitions. And I did a lot of that very successfully, and so much so that they almost made me repeat the course so I could do it again the year after, because it was good for the school, which I did. And one of my partners that second year when I did this, he was addicted to a BlackBerry, and he had, I guess it would have been predating the 7290. It was probably still black and white then. I forget which model it would have been. But he was just addicted to this, and him and his dad both had it, and he was just the original CrackBerry addict I ever saw. Before that, I'd never seen even a BlackBerry in use. I didn't even know it was made by a company named RIM, or that was a Canadian company. I just saw my buddy who was addicted to this thing. And I didn't use one for a while after that. And then I think in my last year of university, I had a case study that mentioned BlackBerry, but I think it was actually a case study about Palm and what Palm was going to do to sort of reinvent themselves and everything like that, going from Palm Pilots to the Trio and the Decisions. So that was kind of like my earliest smartphone introduction was, seeing him, and then a school case study on Palm that had a mention of BlackBerry being, on the rise. But it was still fairly early at that point. And then I forgot about BlackBerry for a while. And it was 2005 when I went and got my first, real job after university, working for a company called CanWest Global, which was one of Canada's biggest media companies at the time. So, international or national, they owned the big newspapers that were across the country, a lot of the TV stations. They had the Canada.com website, which was kind of where I actually joined up in their online division and in business development. But it was the first day of work at that company where the IT guy came down from the higher floor, dropped a BlackBerry on my desk and kind of hooked me up, and that was it. And I was like, what do I need this for? And he's like, everybody gets one. and I was like, it's ugly as hell was my initial thought. Because until that point, I was always on flip phones. I had the original StarTAC, analog, and then the digital. Then I think in school, I was in university in those, late 90s, early 2000s. I had probably Samsung flip phones, I want to say, just like little cell phones. And then it was this boom, shifted to this big beast of a phone with a full QWERTY. And I didn't use it for a couple days because I was just like, I don't need this thing. And then I started to use it, and then I became the CrackBerry addict. And I was like my buddy I had seen a couple years ago, and I was like, oh my God, this thing's amazing. And it just resonated with me. So it was that was my first real introduction to it. And then, CrackBerry itself, we'll maybe come back to that story of the origins of CrackBerry in a little bit. But that was my first real experience with it. So, Blaze, how about you?
Well, there's actually like two stories that I could basically tell. The second story is the one that I usually tell people, and that's when I basically was old enough to essentially know what a BlackBerry was. So I'll get there in a second, but I actually have like an earlier, prior to even knowing what BlackBerry was at that point, story that has never actually been told. So yeah,
Exclusive.
It's kind of funny. It's exclusive because I don't even think Michelle knows. Back in the early days in Halifax, Nova Scotia, there was essentially several mobile companies that were coming up. There was Bell and Telus and everything like that. But when Rogers initially started out, it was actually called Rogers Cantel. And at that point in time, I think it was like 1998, maybe 1999 or something like that. I was still in like high school. And I remember my mom's boyfriend was a representative for Rogers Cantel at that point in time. And when that was all taking place, they basically handed out BlackBerry 850s to everybody, all of the employees. You just got 850s to basically go ahead. Like they were, here, this is the next evolution in email and paging and so on and so forth. And everybody had one. And I remember when my mom's boyfriend would go to work, I would take his that he would like, because he had several of them at the house, that they were just basically, that's how readily available they were. They had several of them at the house. He would leave them on the table and stuff like that, and I would take them at that point, and I'd walk around and pretend like I was the bomb with this BlackBerry pager that I had on my hip. So I'd be like showing off all my friends and stuff.
That's awesome.
Didn't even know how to use it. Didn't know what it was at that point in time. I just knew that at that point it was a popular item that people were like, hey, this is awesome, right? And they were kind of like older at that point. So that was the initial start where I didn't even know what the hell I was trying to be cool with and had no understanding of it. Like I just knew that it was a fancy ass pager at that point in time. I didn't know what it did.
I feel like a little bit of fate happened there. That was that's funny.
Exactly. And then basically from there, I mean, I fell in love with the technology, like Motorola Razr and everything like that. I had one of them when they very first came out, but the very first like BlackBerry, when I actually realized what a BlackBerry was and understood it and everything like that, was pretty much when they released the BlackBerry Pearl. At that point in time, I was working with AT&T customer care, and AT&T customer care, AT&T was one of the first U.S. carriers to make the BlackBerry Pearl available, and we got all of the advertising and all that stuff ahead of time to know that, hey, like this device is coming out. Here's the release date. Here's how much it costs. All that stuff. And I remember reading on like some website. I believe it was like Mobile Burn or something like that. It was a really popular website back in the day, and they used to have like all the devices that would come out and they'd show you. And I remember falling in love with like the BlackBerry Pearl because it was the first BlackBerry that didn't actually look like it was for like business users, right? It actually looked like a smartphone. It was like, hey, anybody can pick this up. You don't need to be, carrying around a big blue brick like this in order for it to be a BlackBerry. Like
QWERTY, full QWERTY keyboard, so nice.
Right, but it looks so awesome at that point in time, and the advertising that BlackBerry had, the marketing that they had to go along with it was like, it was just really awesome at that point in time. It was like, oh my God, I need to have this. So eventually it made its way to Rogers, and that was the very first BlackBerry that I first picked up, is BlackBerry Pearl. And then I quickly moved into, the 8300, 8310, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think for me it was 7290 was the work one I was issued at CanWest, and when I left there about a year, I think year and a half later, it was funny because I was friends with my manager and we left on good terms, and I didn't want to give back my BlackBerry, so I kept it for like 2 weeks, and she was calling me up. She's like, Kevin, you have to bring that phone back, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm just trying to I need to get another one. I haven't done it yet, and I was waiting a little bit because I wanted an 8700. And I eventually gave him the phone back. Then I got an 8700 was my next one. And that was the phone that I think turned me into a CrackBerry addict big time. Because that thing was just a brick, but it was like nice to type on, powerful, great battery life. I loved it in a holster. It had that sort of plasticky holster you could just whip the thing out of. And then, the company I went to after that, I made everybody buy BlackBerries, right? So that was kind of the the CrackBerry origin story was, going to this new company where we were focused on like online marketing, even building websites was a big part of what we were doing. And we were always brainstorming ideas of like, what should we build? What should we do? What should we build? And it was one night where 3 of us were sitting at a bar, kind of all ignoring each other, looking down at our frickin' BlackBerries. And, one guy was like, CrackBerry. I was like, .com. I'm like, well, is there CrackBerry.com? I don't know, but if there isn't, let's build it. And, ignoring each other, drinking beer. That's where it all started.
But
Which
Chris,
seems fitting enough.
Chris, do you remember the original version of the Pearl before it was called a Pearl?
No.
Wait, the
7100. It was.
yeah,
Oh, the
7100,
term.
sure. That thing was not as friendly though.
No, it was terrible. It really was.
But that
But it
had
was
sure type, right? Or sure press,
Yes.
sure type.
Yeah,
It had
sure.
ShowType. It was the first one to have ShowType.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a consumer phone, but if you remember what it looked like, it had no camera, and it was a little bit bulky. And
Yeah,
it
it
just
still
didn't
had
work.
like the triangular shape to it and everything like that. I
Yeah, if I
remember
remember,
seeing
it
them
had
on T-Mobile
a track
at
wheel
that time.
that you used your thumb for, if I remember correctly. So, and then when they basically rebooted that device as the Pearl, and then it was a huge success.
That's true. Yeah, it got a little bit smaller because it was a bit of it was pretty chunky, right? A little bit wide,
Yeah.
like had that bowed shape, almost like a coffin or something. Like it was
Yeah,
kind
or like a boat. It
Little
looked like
thick.
a boat.
yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to mention to you guys is BlackBerry was actually pretty sneaky when it came to trying to get into the enterprise.
What?
Because
Tell us more.
Yeah. Because what they did was they knew that people, the end user, would love the thing and want to use it, but they knew that IT would be like, no, you shouldn't have this, security, and we don't want to put a BlackBerry server in because we got no time. So what they did was they configured the BlackBerry desktop software, so where you could flip a switch and it became like a mini Bears on your PC. And that's how they got around IT. So basically you would leave your PC on like 24/7, and your BlackBerry's messages will go through your PC to the rim knock and out. And that's how you got around IT. And IT just didn't know what was going on for a long time. And eventually they clued into that, and they started blocking the Bears ports and stuff. But that's actually how they got into the enterprise.
Okay, so what was the port? What was the famous Bez port? Was it 4041 or something like that?
It's been so long.
I'm having flashbacks to if I say the name Jibby, I know Blaze will know who it is, but I don't know if anybody else will remember Jibby who's listening. That'd be cool though.
Is it 3701 or 37?
37, yeah, because for a while there they started like a Bez community, and I think it was called like Port 30 something, and I just can't remember the number.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I remember that site too. I remember when it went up, and it was like, oh wow, they're covering enterprise stuff.
And one of the other things that
went over
was
everybody's head.
One of the things that in the beginning days of BlackBerry, which really was quite a horrific thing for me, is that I was in the World Trade Center on 9/11. And, when I came outside, I had a Nokia phone, and it wouldn't work, of course. If you remember that day, the phone networks were completely swamped. But the BlackBerry was on a data-only network in those days, and it worked beautifully. I could send and receive emails back and forth with family and friends, and letting them know where I was and that I was okay and everything. But that was the incredible thing, was this BlackBerry worked beautifully on the day when the cell phone network was completely killed. You couldn't make a phone call.
It was port 3101.
That's
All right,
it.
we were pretty good. There you go. Port 3101. Crushed it. No, on selling, yeah, that's I've read you have a long article about that, right, Craig? I'm having flashbacks to having read that story of yours in detail.
I think it's on 911digitalarchives.org. I think I wrote it. That's up there.
Okay. Yeah, it was a scary day.
Oh, yeah.
Historical.
I remember having to configure, like Craig was saying about people's computers and the desktop solutions and stuff like that. I remember doing AT&T tier 3 tech support and having to configure that and let people know that, like, this is how you do it and this is how you set it up. And some people just didn't get it and some people got it. It was an amazing time because everybody was interested in smartphones at that point, and AT&T customer care was just constantly swamped with questions, right?
And I think one of the things I remember too from those days is that before the BlackBerry came along, before the GSM version of the BlackBerry came along, which was what, the 5810, the 5820, that one, nobody purchased cellular data because no one understood what they would use it for.
Right.
But then when the 5810 came along, all of a sudden the carriers were like spiking on data usage and people were buying data packages. And that's actually really what changed my mind about the whole thing, is that this is going to change the world because this device is changing people's behavior and they're buying data packages where they didn't before.
I think that's one of the things, and my BlackBerry history is good, but not as good as probably many of the people who lived through those earlier days more or worked at the company, which of course there are thousands of people, which maybe when we do some of these continued anniversary podcasts, we'll have some ex-BlackBerry guests on who can go into some of the untold stories. But I think that was one of the things that maybe doesn't get, BlackBerry doesn't get attention for anymore because just things have evolved so much, but that they were really part of the driving force of data adoption among carriers, right? They had a product in those early days that needed data and they started to build consumer demand for data. And, carriers were like, holy smokes, now we can get more money from customers by selling data plans. And then I think the ironic part is it's also what started to screw them was when the networks jumped from 3G up to LTE, BlackBerry wasn't ready for it. And Mobile World Congress is coming up next week, and I remember being there. Geez, I forget how many years ago now, but I remember Mike Lazaridis, the co-CEO of the company, was giving a keynote speech there. So auditorium full of people, and he basically is talking about data apocalypse. And he's like, guys, you don't understand. Like, we only have this much data in the world on mobile. And if we sell this many more smartphones among all the companies out there, everything's going to blow apart and the world will end, basically. And nobody's smartphone will work. Which if I was him as CEO making the pitch that, hey, I only sell, Edge or 3G phones and I don't have an LTE phone in the hopper, that I want to keep, selling more of those. So he was really making this case that, the data efficiency of BlackBerry is what we need to do. It's not about consuming more bandwidth on our devices. It's about, conserving it and, allowing more users to get on, but using less with what we do. And then obviously that didn't happen because the carriers are like, well, that might be true of these networks, but we're just going to roll out LTE, and we need phones that just suck back the data for the time being.
I mean, he was in a way kind of correct because there was essentially a data crunch at some point in time where the networks, especially with AT&T, where they had the exclusive on the iPhone, they didn't know what to do at that point in time because the iPhone was sucking down so much data. There was so much strain on the AT&T network. They didn't know what to do at that point. They had outages all the time, but evolution took over and they rolled out bigger and better and more improved.
Yeah, it was a real problem, but it wasn't. It was one that they were going to solve, right? And I just remember being there in the audience, and he really believed what he was saying, but I think everybody else was like, "You're not going to hold back people wanting more data, right? And consuming it." And
the thing is that in the beginning days, his design was incredible because when the BlackBerry sent and received emails, if you remember, it would compress it down and it was like a tenth of the size. But in those days, mobile devices did not send images and embedded anything. the BlackBerry server would take an HTML email and strip it to plain text, and then compress it down like a tiny little file and send it over the network. So you would get this whole email, and it would be so tiny, it would only be a few bytes, and it would just take a few, seconds off your battery, that kind of thing. So he was doing it, and he was correct. But by the time,
exactly. Just things change. I remember too, one of the first BlackBerry, or maybe it was, I guess it wasn't called BlackBerry World at that point. It was the WES conferences, the Wireless Enterprise Symposium. And oh my God, I got to remember, this is like, I didn't prep enough for this in terms of my brain power. It was their previous CTO, I think, at BlackBerry. Was it David Yak? Y-A-C-H, Yaw.
Yeah.
I think he was like head of software or CTO back when Mike and Jim were there earlier years. And I remember he got up on stage, and there were some really like memorable things. He talked about the BlackBerry experience, and his whole story was, BlackBerry saves, it basically adds time to your day by shaving seconds off of every time you use the phone, right? So it's this whole thing of like, the LED notifies you quicker when you get a message. The phone, you pull the phone out of your holster and it's already turned on. Keyboard shortcuts, the pushiest, fastest email. It was just, an experience designed for that. And then I remember he started the presentation with that story, which I thought was really good. And then Mike Lazaridis came up and he talked about basically the physics of building a smartphone. He said, with BlackBerry, we always try to hit the sweet spot of, I'm trying to think what the 4 pillars were, but it was like battery life, performance of like the speed of the processor, data consumption, then something else. And he said, with any of those, and it's always a balancing act, right? Because if you put too much performance in, you're going to sacrifice your battery life. If you suck back too much data, you're going to affect this and this. And he said, the secret to BlackBerry's success to that point in time was always about taking these 4 physical constraints or physics constraints, basically, of smartphone tech, and like finding the sweet spot for it. And I thought that was really cool. I think what just changed over time became, yes, there's constraints that you have to balance, but we just kept adding more to it all around, right? It's like, well, we got more performance and we'll just go bigger batteries and bigger, huger phones.
Yeah.
It became less about balancing and more about like just throw in more of everything.
So a couple of things started changing, right? So by the time he stood up on stage and on that conference there, as you said, he was already behind the curve, because he was trying to tell people that they needed to work on a slower device and all of that. But he was completely wrong. He was essentially holding on to the past, and he didn't believe, as we know, that people wanted to touch their phones and play music and watch videos.
Yeah.
But what I was getting to just now was they used to compress the email, but then at some point, people started sending videos and images, and then you can't really compress those things. They're already compressed. So then the BlackBerry's advantage went away, because you can't compress images. So
Right.
yes, you can compress text, but not images. And so that's when it started to go down. And they used to say to people, we compress our emails. And my answer was, yes, but you can't really compress an image file.
Right.
It's already compressed.
Which is much bigger to begin with.
Yeah. And then, of course, as you pointed out, when the iPhone came along, basically Apple said, you just put a much faster CPU in the thing, lots of memory, and a touch screen, and a bigger battery, and then it's still fine. And of course, the battery life was terrible, but people didn't care, because they had this like supercomputer in their pocket now, and they just didn't care about that.
It's funny, as we're talking to, I hope this is fun for our listeners. I should say too, we're recording this live, and we kind of gave a very short, 1 hour heads up to the audience and on Twitter on the site that we're recording live. But we do have a chat room going with more people than I expected watching. So thanks for joining us on a Sunday night. If anybody has questions, think about them, and maybe 15 minutes or so, we'll start taking some questions from the audience too. So you can, I'll give a cue, and then we'll look at the live chat and start going through to ask or to answer them. But I forgot my train of thought. I was going to say something though now. Oh, those early years though, flashbacks. What's funny is a lot of the best, because BlackBerry was sometimes so rigid about what they would do or wouldn't do because of some of these principles they had, they actually created a fantastic environment for developers. And a lot of the most successful BlackBerry app developers through 2007, 8, 9, etc., they were people who were just putting features together that weren't in the operating system that the users wanted. So, for example, on the topic of email, a good friend of mine from years back where I first met him was Neil Sainsbury, lives in Australia, and his company was called BB Smart, and they came out with the BB Smart HTML viewer for email for BlackBerry. And this was crazy because we would promote the heck out of this app. These weren't $2 apps. He was charging $25 or $30 for this BlackBerry app that allowed your emails not to be just in plain, boring, unformatted text on your BlackBerry, but it would add color and I think you could have inline image viewing and all that, which didn't exist previously on BlackBerry. So everybody wanted it. So he did very well for a string of time there with an app solving something that BlackBerry should have built in by default, which would eventually BlackBerry did add it in. And I remember there were some apps. One was called, I think, Peekahoo, and I think I forget. Man, I'm losing track of all my names now. I got rebuilt after, but it was one that basically did like pop-up notifications.
Yeah, I remember that one
on the BBOS. Which I remember initially people were like, why would you want pop-ups? And then, of course, basically everybody has, your drop-down notification or your effectively pop-up notification now on your OS. And it was the same thing. All these guys did really, really well. Or the one where you could customize your LED lights. That was always a hugely popular app, just to have more customization on it. And, BlackBerry added in most of these things down the road after, and, BB10 killed some of the ability to do that. But with the original BlackBerry phones, the developer community would just crush it on patching those gaps on functionality.
Mm-hmm. Also, in the beginning days, BlackBerries did not handle attachments. Way in the beginning, you could not open up an attachment on a BlackBerry. So companies like MetaMessage sprung up. I actually worked at MetaMessage for a year, and they had a service that was separate from the BlackBerry server, and it would handle your attachment viewing. It's crazy.
Wow.
That is crazy. I didn't even realize that.
Oh yeah, no attachments. It was just text. If somebody sent you an attachment, you looked at it on your BlackBerry, you wouldn't have an attachment. You would just have the text of the email there. That's it.
That's crazy. Okay. Let's see. What should we talk about? So we've covered a bit of BlackBerry history, which is fun on this show. I'm trying to think. We could do a little bit more of the earliest days of CrackBerry, how we got going. But I feel like maybe we'll save that for another show also. What do you think? Or should we go into that? Or does everybody know the story? I think maybe everybody knows it.
Maybe not.
Well, I know the story.
You know
Craig
the story?
knows the story.
Okay.
But I think that there's plenty of people out there who don't know the story.
No, the stories. Yeah, I gave part of the story, right, in terms of how we came up with the idea for CrackBerry.com. Oh my God, that should be a website. And the next thing that happened was I went home that night, looked to see if anybody had a website running already called CrackBerry.com, to discover there was not a CrackBerry.com, but there was a landing page up on the internet saying, "This domain is for sale, $15,000 non-negotiable."
Wow.
Which
non-negotiable.
which in 2006 was a little pricey, but I like to do stupid things from time to time, so we ended up buying that domain. After we made the offer though and made the deal, the guy who owned it almost backed out of it, and I got really angry, but he ended up selling it to us, and we didn't do anything right away, and we had other projects we were working on, and we were deciding like what would we do with the CrackBerry.com. And I wasn't, I was always a tech enthusiast, but not, or at least I thought I was, and a bit of a gadgety nerd, but not somebody who was, visiting tech blogs every day at that point in time. But what happened was in November 2006, Webster's Dictionary actually added CrackBerry to the dictionary and called it the new word of the year, because it was becoming, a thing at that point, and everybody was getting addicted to their BlackBerries. And then I remember over the next 2 or 3 days after that announcement happened, we had just literally hundreds of offers come through to want to buy the domain name. So, the decision was, well, we could probably turn that $15,000 into, maybe $100,000, who knows? Or we should actually get off our butts and launch the site. So that was what we did, is we launched the site, we got working on it, and it went live. I think it soft launched on your birthday, right, Blaze? February 13th?
February 13th.
Yep. 13th. Happy birthday. belated birthday. And
Thanks.
then it actually went, we did our Hello World press release on February 26th, which was 2007, which is coming up soon. Our 10-year anniversary to the day is coming up soon. But it was interesting because when we started the website at that point in time, I didn't really know what we were going to do with it. So the goal wasn't like we're launching a tech blog. It was, I want to make this the number one, independent resource for BlackBerry owners worldwide. And that could be, tech enthusiasts. It could be people just looking for, wallpapers and apps for their BlackBerry. I need a new case. It could be somebody who was searching Google for help, looking for how to move their contacts from one phone to the next, all that kind of stuff. It was just, we want to build a great resource for BlackBerry users. And podcasting at the time was not on mind. Leaks and rumors in the BlackBerry space or the tech blogging space, I knew nothing about. And we looked at other sites. So we found other websites that were in existence, like, and some of them, there were a couple BlackBerry websites that seemed pretty small at the time. So I wasn't sure if it was a good idea or not. There was BlackBerry Cool. There was Pinstack was a forum. There was BlackBerry Forums, which is maybe the biggest one at the time. There were some Trio sites like TrioCentral.com and TrioNauts. So there was a few examples to look at, and it seemed pretty clear that the thing to do was, put up a blog where people write articles, build a forum where people can, become members and talk to each other, and launch a store where you can sell stuff. And I found a partner for our store, which at the time was called MobiHand, who was approaching it from the app side of things, where they had an app platform and you could, buy BlackBerry apps through it. And we also had, they also provided accessory sales, which at that time I thought they were doing it. I didn't realize there was a different partner they had providing that business. And, we launched the site, and I didn't even start off doing, I did a few of the initial blog posts, but I had other staff I was working with in this company where we were first launching it. And, it wasn't until, if it was February that year was when we kind of soft launched and launched. It was when I went to BlackBerry World, WES, that I guess it would have been May, that my eyes got opened up and I was like, oh, wow, this is, this has legs to become something big. Because then you saw firsthand, the people in this business of BlackBerry at the time. And it was very enterprise at that point. But it was just eye-opening to me. And after that, I really started to get into, the content side a lot more. And then everything kind of blew up after that. We definitely had some like traction immediately, and props to some of our very first members on the site, guys like Nava Williams or Ivan Williams, and Tom Abel Green. I have to go back, man. My memory is almost not as good. We had so many like just immediate CrackBerry members who started, and things blew up. And I think those early years, what was crazy is, certain things happened just that came together really cool. Like I remember even when we did our first press release on February 26th, I think the headline, and you could find it on PR Web, but I think it was a headline like CrackBerry.com launches to, amazing reviews from BlackBerry fans. and I get this email from this guy, and he's like, how did you just fire off this press release? This ended up on my Bloomberg terminal, where you get all the crazy stock news and everything. And I'm like, I don't know, but I guess Bloomberg picked it up as like a BlackBerry stock type of announcement. So right away, it was like the world kind of knew about it. And we never had less than 5,000 visitors a day from almost day one of the site going live.
Wow.
And, when the BlackBerry Bold 9000, and we were kind of growing like steadily as a site, but what really put us on the map was, I guess, almost a year later when the BlackBerry Bold 9000 was about to come out. And I bought one off eBay that popped up for sale before it was ever announced as a phone. And it seemed legit, and I bought it right away, and it got shipped to me from, I think, the UK. And we reviewed the heck out of it, a week before WES. and I remember, the first WES I went to, I was wearing a bright green t-shirt, and everybody's like, who's this crazy kid kind of thing. No love or very little love from very few people. But then that next year, the week, I went back to Wes, and it was right after I reviewed the Bolt 9000. And of course, everybody at that point then knew who I was. And CrackBerry really became, much more of a recognized space and part of the ecosystem, So there was BlackBerry, there was CrackBerry, there was carriers, there were developers, and we were always this glue in the middle of everything from that time forward. And I think to this day, we still are sort of glue. I never think of us as you could say technically we are online media publisher, online community, etc. But I think we're just, we're an entity that's part of CrackBerry's part of what BlackBerry is, right? And we've kind of always been that way. But I think the funniest thing was what really made CrackBerry a huge site was the BlackBerry Storm. And this is going to sound really funny, but there was nothing better for our growth and success than BlackBerry making bad products for a while, and the Storm being like the worst product, because when you have a product that millions of people buy and they have issues with it, everybody wants to go online to either get help or complain about it. and the BlackBerry Storm, when it came out, it was, Apple put the iPhone on AT&T. You had millions of Verizon customers who wanted to buy an iPhone, couldn't, and the BlackBerry Storm was the alternative. And it was not a very good phone. I mean, I know there's people who are watching this and they're like, I love my Storm. The clicky screen was amazing. And you're amazing for that. But for most people, it was, slow and buggy. And Verizon was like taking 6 months to put out OS updates to fix all the issues. And in the meantime, we were leaking OS updates every Friday, which were provided to us, I think, by BlackBerry. I don't know where they came from. But it was like, here, guys, every Friday, here's a new OS update. And if you called Verizon customer support, they would literally tell you, like, yeah, it's going to be 4 months before we have an official update that's carrier approved. But just go to CrackBerry. They'll hook you up with the latest software and it'll fix all your problems. So we literally had the carriers doing CrackBerry marketing for us. It was an amazing era. The only thing was it was painful because I know today we still get people, complaining about the site load time, where it's like, oh, the sites take too long to load. But back then, the site could take like 2 minutes to load because we were just crushed with traffic, and our server infrastructure for running the site was just not up to snuff, or not up to par yet with what you need.
Just a side note there.
Yeah.
I remember writing about BlackBerry OS leaks. Like, I would post an OS available for download, and then in that evening I would be doing AT&T customer care tech support, telling people to go download the OS.
It was great. I remember times we would post a BlackBerry Storm OS like leak at maybe 11 p.m. or 1 in the morning. I would go to bed. By the time I woke up at 6:30, 7 a.m., walked back to the computer and went to the forums, that forum thread would have 200,000 views. Because literally you just had so many people in America who were like, oh my God, I can fix my phone. And they would stay up all night and fix it. It was just an insane thing to see. And, it never happens like that anymore. Oh, I'm looking at the live chat, and Richard P. Cable, Richard Samil, he's saying the Storm rants and raves for him. And it's true. Like, at that point in time, CrackBerry divided into, like, there was CrackBerry forums where everybody had their other devices, and it was nice and normal, and it was like it was the old CrackBerry everybody loved. And then there was just the Storm forums, which were insanely busy. And just
it remains the only forum that had to be separated from the rest of the CrackBerry forum. Like, we literally had to separate the disgruntled users from the happy users.
It was insane. But those were the days, and it was crazy. Like, a lot of things. I mean, even I think for people, when I come back to, like, CrackBerry as a business, and what were we exactly? And I think one thing I think some people realize, but others probably never even think about, is also our e-commerce strengths. So CrackBerry, from where we sold it, or where we started it, sold it to smartphone experts at the time. Now it's Mobile Nations, became part of that entity, obviously. And what I didn't know back on the day we launched CrackBerry was that smartphone experts was actually powering the accessory side of the business, of our, like, Shop CrackBerry store at that point in time, while MobiHand was doing the app side. And So we sold into that business, and e-commerce has always been, back then even online advertising didn't exist, right? So the way CrackBerry made money through 2007, 8, 9, 10, and still today was through e-commerce. And selling cases for your BlackBerry, spare batteries, car chargers. Our number one selling product, what do you think it was? Ever, like volume wise, what did we sell more of than anything else for many years? BlackBerry trackballs, replacement trackballs.
Right. Oh man.
So this was like what what powered basically the business. And even on the app side, coming back to filling in the gaps that BlackBerry didn't get to quick enough. BlackBerry didn't launch BlackBerry App World until, what was it? It was like April 1st, 2009, I want to say, or 10. Blaze,
yeah, it was 2009 or 2010.
Yeah, search it while we're talking, just because I'm curious. But the thing is, you had an appetite for apps long before BlackBerry came on board, and CrackBerry had its app store for day one, and we became very established as this big pillar of the BlackBerry community. So before BlackBerry App World ever launched, we were driving, anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 downloads a day of paid apps, not free stuff, but paid stuff. And this was, BlackBerry themes for phones, because people would, developers would be coming out with custom themes. You had all these apps like the HTML email viewer, that kind of thing. And then also we had the accessory business. And I remember my first trip to we have still have today a warehouse in Inverness, Florida, where we stock a lot of our products, and our call center's out of there. And my first trip to that call center, I remember being shocked, because basically all day long, from the moment I walked into the building to when I left, it was nothing but phone calls coming in, crackberry.com, crackberry.com, crackberry.com. And it was app support questions. It was people who were just, they were buying apps, they were getting it, and then at some point in the process, they may have had issues. And it wasn't like it was an out of whack number of customer support calls. It was just that there was such a big business there around, app sales for BlackBerry, that, the commerce business on accessories is always smooth. You might get a couple phone calls here and there, but runs really smooth. But just the process of installing apps and all these things, it was more complication, and people would want to follow up. And I just remember being shocked, being like, holy smokes, there's 12 people in here just taking phone calls for CrackBerry app store, software questions right now. It was
2009.
2009, yeah. And even after they launched, I figured, the day BlackBerry App World launched, the CrackBerry App Store would die overnight. And, it was another probably year and a half before finally that business went away. And, obviously BlackBerry is the ultimate stakeholder to do that sort of business at that point in time. But, it's crazy. So over the years, the way a site and a business like CrackBerry stays together is, by always thinking, what are the needs that users have and how can we provide them? And, had we started the business or started the site thinking I don't even think we started thinking it was a business. It was just this is a crazy idea, let's do it. But we loved it and we wanted to make it into a business. You have to kind of be on top of it to see the opportunities. And that's still something to this day that, Mobile Nations, our parent company, we're always looking ahead of what are the services we can provide to smartphone and consumer technology consumers out there. And we actually have a lot of cool stuff launching this year that's, outside of our core websites, which, in addition to CrackBerry, we have Android Central and iMore and Windows Central. We have some other fun stuff too, Tesla Central is kind of a pet project on the side, things like that. But there's a whole other area to the business that we have, and that's just the attitude we've always had through the years. But I think a lot of people probably don't realize that. It's cool. What should we talk about, guys? Should we take some questions?
By the way, how do I see the chat room?
You have to go to the YouTube link, and there's a live chat in the top right corner.
Okay, got it.
So if we have some questions, I've got millions of things we can talk about, but I don't want us to go too much over an hour. We'll just do more shows. So much passion keeps BlackBerry alive, Eduardo says. Blaze, apparently you rock.
Yes, I do. And thank you for saying so, Kevin.
While we wait for some questions to come in, because I don't see any right now. Things are at a slight delay if they're watching live. I think we should talk about favorite leaks of all time or CrackBerry stories of all time.
Yeah.
Craig won't have these maybe, but I know Blaze will have a couple.
I mean, my biggest one was like the BlackBerry Bolt 9000 that you bought off of eBay, because that was absolutely amazing at the time.
Doing the first reviews of phones, and we talked a little bit about this on the last show, right? At the end of the last show, was super fun. And those were always wicked stories. I think the craziest one I ever had was there was, prior to the launch of the BlackBerry Storm, that was like one of the most heated times. And part of the issue was there was two freaking code names. There was a BlackBerry Storm was a code name, and BlackBerry Thunder was a code name. And they were the same phone, except you had two versions, right? There was the CDMA version and the GSM version. And I can't remember. I think Thunder turned out to be the CDMA, Storm was the code name, and then Storm was like the GSM model. But people were getting into fights over it, including myself and at the time, Boy Genius from Boy Genius Report, Jonathan Geller. And I remember this one time where I don't even remember the details, but like we, got into an online argument about, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, it's going to be this, it's going to be this. And nobody had yet seen the device still. And at that point, there was only a handful of these things in existence, right? It was still very early in that process, right? We were still a ways from launch. And then I posted the first real photo of the BlackBerry Storm. Like that was legitimately somebody took a photo of the device. And it kind of shut the argument up around some things, because I was like massive. I was like, where did this come from? And do you know where it came from? I can't give away the full story because people would be implicated to this day. But the story is, the person whose phone it was doesn't even know it came from them at BlackBerry.
Wow.
Because it turned out, I've never said this story before. I'll never divulge full details. But it turned out it was potentially a son or daughter, I'll just say either or, of a BlackBerry employee who was a huge CrackBerry fan, who may or may not have just snuck into the bedroom that night and borrowed his mom or dad's BlackBerry Storm and snapped a photo of it and sent it to CrackBerry.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? And that's where the world's first BlackBerry Storm photo came from. And nobody to this day knows like where it came from. And I know BlackBerry tried like crazy back then to figure out, where did this thing come from? We know where they're all from, and nobody would ever do that, which is a crazy story. So there you go. I won't say who, but and if the person is listening who actually sent me that photo, you were amazing. That was the greatest thing ever. Nobody got in trouble, and it was good overall. Looking back, it turned out to be a pretty good story.
I remember when those leaks came out, they would go and look at the grain on the desk and try and figure out whose desk that was, and those kind of things. Trying to figure out who the employee was.
Oh, and that there were people who got fired, right? Somebody took a picture of, what was it, the BlackBerry Pearl Flip in a bathroom or something, and they figured out which bathroom on the RIM campus it was, and there's all sorts of crazy stories like that. But man, those were crazy days. I will say, like for myself, between 2007 and 2011, just torture. Like I think Blaze and Adam too, is all the same for all of us. It's like that was morning till night, like just torture on the body, no sleep. Yep. Like living in like that era of time. And especially there were so many devices coming out on a regular basis, and I'd get like 300 emails a day from just people. I gave myself like carpal tunnel over a couple of years, just typing, whether it was on a keyboard or on a BlackBerry, just nonstop finger action all the time. Amazing how things change. Okay, let's look at the questions now. I'm gonna look scrolling up because now there's too many questions. Somebody said, what drew you away from BB and towards Apple? Ooh, interesting. I mean, So it's not that I got drawn towards Apple or anything. I mean, the reason I liked BlackBerry when I got it was the most cutting edge consumer technology at the time. It was the best smartphone on the market. And Apple and Google didn't exist, or Android didn't exist, I should say, and iPhone didn't exist. Apple and Google both existed as companies, just they didn't have mobile tech yet. So for me, like what drew me to BlackBerry is that it was the best. And I've always been a guy who likes the best stuff, no matter what I do. It could be like playing sports. I want the best equipment. It could be, clothing. I want to have something I love, like I like getting things that are awesome. That's always been my motive operandi, whatever the term is. So as BlackBerry was always the best, I always loved it. And when other things emerged that looked promising, I never hated them because it was like, BlackBerry's the best. I hate everything else. I just always embraced all tech. And I would try it. So, I mean, I've played with everything through the years. I mean, people will remember too, when we ran events like the smartphone round robin, we would take turns. So, I mean, you could find on CrackBerry my review of the original Android phone, the T-Mobile G1, even the first iPhones, I reviewed them. So over the years, I'd always keep up on top of everything. Always loved BlackBerry though, especially through those crazy years. And was just truly addicted to it. And at the start, I loved physical keyboards. And I still love a physical keyboard, but I couldn't type on glass at the start, even when the first iPhones came out. I thought it was ridiculous. But I eventually learned how to type on glass. And I think probably most of us now are faster on glass itself. Physical keyboard's not about all-out typing speed, right? It's about typing more accurately, faster, and in various conditions. And if you hit up the CrackBerry YouTube channel, you can see my video on the top 7 reasons why physical keyboards still rock. But I think for me, during that waiting period, waiting for BB10, some of the more recent, just times, I just use everything. And it's not that I went iPhone only. I've always mixed it up. I've always kept BlackBerries at hand. I've always had Android phones at hand. I mean, my last non-BlackBerry phone was a Google Pixel. I was using an iPhone 7 before that. I just mix it up. So I think everybody now is I also posted a video this week called "Everybody's Poop Stinks," and I think that is kind of true now. Where I think back in where that era where BlackBerry fell from graces, waiting for BB10 at the end of the BBOS era, while the stock price was falling. At that point, everybody else was doing so well, right? Samsung is growing with their sales, and iPhone sales are growing, and everybody's doing great while BlackBerry wasn't. And it made it like doubly worse on BlackBerry at the time, because no matter what they did, it just wasn't working. But I think now everybody's poop stinks. You got the Note 7 disaster. You got Apple, I think, ticking off consumers with many of the decisions they're making in products, like their new MacBook Pro I bought for work. And I think it's my 4-year-old MacBook Pro is actually a better machine, which is to me ridiculous that that's the case. And even as Mobile Nation's a company, we've probably bought 10 new MacBooks in the last few months since that one came out. And half of the people are picking the older model over the newer model, which tells me that's a serious problem. If these are tech enthusiasts who work at Mobile Nations and they're picking a older product over the newer product, you can't tell me that is a good. They nailed it, right? They messed up. So I think everybody's poop stinks right now, and BlackBerry I think right now has a great chance to kind of just come back. I know in the CrackBerry community, we have a ton of people who just love BB10, and they're like, BB10 is the greatest OS and it's the best, and they just want more BlackBerry 10 phones. I understand that desire. I like BB10 a lot as an OS, but the fact is, that's a minority, and it's not a growth story if you don't have the ecosystem. Everybody wants that attached ecosystem. So the shift to Android is a better future for BlackBerry's growth, or BlackBerry Mobile's growth on handset sales, than trying to do more BB10 devices. I think, for people who want BB10, they can still buy the existing phones, which are pretty awesome. Hopefully it'll be supported for a bit, but it's just not the growth story there. That was way too long an answer, so I'm going to shut up. But I've always loved BlackBerry, and I've never hated anything else. I like to poke fun at whoever screws up from time to time, which everybody does, including BlackBerry. And I'm super excited for the new Mercury, because that's I think I actually think Android, which I've always felt Android to be messy, but I think with Nougat, Android's actually in a spot now that's pretty smooth. And I think Mercury as a form factor compared to say the Priv and that, I think it's good. It's going to hit a good core audience, a good niche audience. So I feel like this is the first really good Android BlackBerry that's going to hit potentially a bigger audience with some good marketing and that behind it.
Yeah, because the first ones were pretty. I mean, when the Priv launched, it was an interesting device and an interesting form factor, but I don't think the form factor had the mass appeal that everybody wanted out of it. You know what I mean? Because it just didn't. It was too different of a form factor to launch as the first Android device from BlackBerry.
The Priv, totally. I think they took you know what? So here's the way I look at it. Okay, this is a great little discussion. With the Priv, I feel like they built a BlackBerry phone for existing Android users. That's why you had like a big full touchscreen on the front, and it's like, oh, we're going to give you this BlackBerry keyboard, which you may or may not use. But they literally went after like an Android audience, not actually after a BlackBerry audience, which kind of makes sense because they still had like good BB10 phones coming out, right? Still at that point kind of thing. I feel like with the Mercury, they're building an Android phone for past and present BlackBerry users.
Yeah.
It's like that classic form of, they're not trying to say we want to go after Apple, we want to go after Samsung with this Mercury. Like they're going after BlackBerry users past and present. There might be some first-time BlackBerry users who find it, but I think this goal is just like move the BlackBerry audience off BB10 or BBOS or whatever they might be using, who still want a physical keyboard, etc., onto this Android device. And between Nougat and hopefully, solid specs around, good battery life, good camera, all that stuff, it's going to be just a great phone. Which, the few minutes I played with it, I really liked it a lot, which is one of the big reasons I'm like, please, we got to make a huge deal of 10 years of CrackBerry so I can come out of retirement because I really want to cover the Mercury, go to the launch of it.
I'm like, oh yeah, 10 years of CrackBerry. Well, let's just blow the doors off of it. I mean, let's
crush it. Okay, I want to read some more questions here, which we'll answer quicker. Question from Reed: will the CrackBerry store carry the Mercury right at launch? Well, I don't know if we'll sell the phone. We'll definitely get accessories and all that. Maybe we could sell the phone. I mean, I think BlackBerry Mobile will sell it, and we will link to it. But we'll see what happens there. Good, quick question. Do you think going to Android instead of BB10 would have helped RIM? That's a fantastic question. So I think yes. So the more I've back hindsight's 2020 and all that, if you look at the meteoric rise of Samsung kind of becoming the #1 Android manufacturer for smartphones, had BlackBerry in, I don't know, 2010 or something like that, committed to Android and said, okay, you know what? We're gonna make BlackBerry be on Android. We see the ecosystems there for apps, etc. But we're gonna bring the BlackBerry DNA, the iconic design, our commitment to security, and we're gonna go all in on Android being the most secure, blah blah blah. I think BlackBerry would have beat Samsung as becoming that #1 Android manufacturer. I really do. I think the more I've looked at it backwards, I'm like, I think thinking you're gonna have 3 ecosystems fully flushed out and huge you're really taking a risk at that. And you would basically be saying, okay, if there's iPhone on the market and Android on the market, and there's going to be maybe Microsoft or Windows Phone on the market and BlackBerry, and you think all 4 are going to be huge with filled out ecosystems, you're being really selfish in a sense, because the reality is, let's say I'm a company that makes something for mobile and I need to build an app for it, right? I mean, heck, I could think about my car. I have a Tesla. They have to build 2 apps right now, right? They have their app for iOS and they have their app for Android, and they need to support both and develop them. You could be anybody. You're Netflix and you want to have your mobile app. Every time there's another ecosystem, you have to build yet another thing to maintain, etc. Apps went this way of ecosystems, the way computers did, versus say the web, right? For the web, we build one CrackBerry website, we follow some standards, and it's gonna load in Chrome or Safari or Firefox or whatever. I just need to maintain one code base and develop one thing. apps never worked that way. You had to keep building them. So to support them all was going to be really hard. And I think, BlackBerry it would have been nice if they could pull it off and been the ecosystem that emerged. But I think maybe the safer bet in retrospect would have been to say, like, okay, we know we're a company with this many resources, and this is what we've done to date. We know who we're competing with in terms of, big bucks, blah, 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 blah. Where's the ecosystem support going to come from? And then if they would have done it, I actually think they would have like out Samsung with BlackBerry Android phones. And Samsung would have grown huge too, but I think like BlackBerry would not fallen off if they would have done it. That's my 2020 hindsight thing. What do you think, Craig? Is that crazy or true?
No, I think you're absolutely right. They really should have embraced Android a lot earlier. You hit the nail on the head, but I don't think they knew how to do it as a company.
No, they did not know.
They just didn't, and I think they were also proud. I think they were saying, "Hey, we created this industry. We used to be the king. Now, why should we go and run Android? Screw that."
Totally.
But yeah,
I get why it didn't happen, but just to answer that question, I'm like, yeah, I think if they would have switched over years ago, while the brand was still hot, pre BB10, instead of doing the playbook. Yeah, the effort that went into launching the BlackBerry Playbook on this new OS and stuff. If that effort would have went into launching the BlackBerry Playbook as an Android tablet, and them getting familiar with Android in those years, they could have maybe, be a different story right now. What we've been talking, but here we are. We have Android phones now from BlackBerry, and it's just going to be a little bit more work to get everybody in the world to buy them. But, the Note 7 blew up, so there's a bit of an opening. Okay, more questions.
The other thing I was going to say about BlackBerry doing something too slow is the BBM stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They had an opportunity many, many, many years ago to put BBM on multiple platforms. And there was actually a piece of software that they wrote for the Palm Pilot and the Windows mobile devices, which allowed you to essentially get a PIN number on those devices, a BlackBerry PIN number, and get email. And they could have taken that opportunity of using that PIN number for BBM, but they never did it. And that was, I think, a huge mistake, because by the time they did cross-platform BBM, WhatsApp had already taken over the planet.
Yeah.
No, and there's a lot of documentation, and I've written about that, how, Jim Balsillie wanted to go cross-platform with BBM much earlier. It was kind of like, I think they called it like SMS 2.0.
Yeah.
And the thing I've been told many times now from people who worked at BlackBerry is that for many, many years there was only one prevailing question asked around every idea, initiative, thought that came up in the company, and it was, how does this help us sell more BlackBerry smartphones? That was it, right? Mm-hmm. They only saw themselves as a company that did that. So if the thought didn't translate into more BlackBerry smartphones, they didn't do it. And that was the problem with this idea, was like, well, if we put BBM everywhere, how's it going to help us sell more phones? It might sell less. And then WhatsApp gets bought by Facebook for $18 billion, right?
That's right.
And, it was, and if you think about WhatsApp, this is similar to what I've been talking about, this conversation around, how we approach CrackBerry over the years. We just looked at the problems of users and we addressed them. And this will sound really funny, but probably my biggest regret or missed opportunity was that we didn't frickin' start WhatsApp or become intimately involved with them day one, because we knew that was a huge pain point of cross-platform messaging. We would have had the developer resources, even the contacts at say BlackBerry, to probably have some of their best people join our team and build something like that early days, or work with them earlier on to help promote it more. And we should have, in hindsight, so now we don't sit on our laurels when we see those kinds of opportunities. But you're absolutely right. That was a big missed opportunity. Blaze, what do you think on that Android question? Should they have switched to Android years sooner?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They definitely should have, because at that point in time, Android was on the rise, and they just took entirely too long to be able to go ahead and get BlackBerry 10 out. So if they would have spent that time working Android, at least it would have been more broadly accepted than, pushing out the last few BlackBerry OS devices that they had in the pipe. And then they wouldn't have ticked off as many users with the wait for BlackBerry 10.
Totally agree. Okay, next question. Kevin, would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? I mean, here's the thing. I feel like 100 duck-sized horses would be so cute, there'd be no fight. Why would they be angry? But I would be scared as hell of a freaking horse-sized duck. So I'm going to pick 100 duck-sized horses. Dbizable asks, was CrackBerry a profitable business? Was it your full-time job during that period, or did you have to work night shifts at Macca's to pay for hosting costs? So we made it. I mean, CrackBerry and Mobile Nations to date has always been a privately owned company. Profitable most of the time. It's not always, it's not easy, and it's not like anybody's retired or anything like that. But I mean, it's been when you're a privately owned company and you're not doing the crazy stuff of we're raising millions of dollars to do this, and you're in a business that is media and e-commerce, you can't really make stupid decisions. You always have to find, that balance of what makes money versus, what delivers the best user experience. And we've been really good at that over the years to find that balance. So, it's been, profitable, great lifestyle. We're up to, I think, about 65, employees or contractors for Mobile Nations. And that's fantastic, and everybody loves what they're doing. I think it's like the dream job to be able to do this. And, we've done it for a lot of years now, and we'll hopefully do it for many, many more years. There's definitely been different eras. I mentioned earlier, like our earlier days where, e-commerce was a huge business for us. It still is, but it's different. But it used to be our owned and operated stores generated all the revenue for the business. And, but in those days Amazon wasn't as prevalent, and you didn't have like cell phone kiosks in every mall or 7-Eleven where you could buy your cases for your phones and that kind of thing. So we were more so like literally solving a problem for people because they couldn't even find this stuff locally, and their carrier stores weren't selling great accessories, and Best Buys weren't carrying it. So we were very much like an early problem solver. And that was a big era for us that, we had some very profitable years that helped fund the business through less profitable years going forward. And, now we have a mix of, there's advertising revenue. We always do a lot of, the way I look at it is we want to help people spend their money. So if you look, whether it's CrackBerry or any of our different sites in the Mobile Nations network, we'll always have a mix of content between, stuff that caters to the people on the watching right now, like the hardcore tech enthusiasts who want to know the latest news and rumors and that. But we do a lot of content that is very basic in nature, helping out to articles, etc., because that helps the billions of just consumers on the planet with their problems that they're going to Google for. And one of the biggest things people look for is, what should I buy next? Help me spend my money wisely. And we do a lot of content related to helping people spend their money. And, if we're able to make a small commission off recommendations and that helps, right? And, everything that we do like that is, help or commerce related, etc. So when you put it all together at the end of the day, there's enough scale there that it's been a good business. I think it's a crazy business too. I don't think I would wake up in 2017 being like, here's a great idea. Let's start an online, tech media company and let's do it. Because it's a world of like stress and craziness and constantly changing things, because everything is constantly changing. And just when you think you found your groove, something changes again. So it's like, hey, this is great. And then, we know how to run websites. And then it's like, everything's moving from desktop to mobile. And then it's like, now it's moving to apps. Now it's moving to social platforms. And you're like, how do we do this? So I'm a perpetual student. I never stop learning. And a lot of my free time goes into, probably more time that even goes into staying on top of tech for me goes into understanding the media business in general. Because, for the last, since 2011, I basically oversee and manage all of the Mobile Nations stuff you see online, right? So if we're launching new websites or content coverage, or even building new personalities these days like Mr. Mobile or Modern Dad, those are all like initiatives that I'm kicking off and making sure they happen. So being back in CrackBerry is fun, but it's like I have another full-time job on top of 2 other full-time jobs. So, but yeah, it's great. And what? The coolest thing is, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would still want to do everything I'm doing now and have been doing, because it's a lot of fun and I love it. Okay, more questions. Kevin and crew, are you all carrying BB10 devices along with the Black droids? So right now I'm using both. I've got D-Tech, my CrackBerry, my literally CrackBerry. I don't know if you can see it. It's got a crack in it because I dropped it. And a classic. This is training me how to use a physical keyboard again. Not that I need training, but getting used to it. And I just like having Android on a BlackBerry. So that's what I'm rocking right now. I am rocking both. Blaze?
I just mainly use my D-Tech 60, but it's not as if I don't have plenty of access to other BB10 devices kicking around or anything like that. So
I know Craig's rocking a new D-Tech 60.
Yeah, D-Tech 60 is my work phone. So I spend most of my day on that phone, actually on the phone, typing emails, doing things. And my personal phone is an iPhone 7 Plus.
Cool. Cool. When will the Storm 3 come? I don't know. Great question. I would say never, but you never know. Things.
You know what you should do, Kevin, is you should try and contact some of the people that works in that team and ask them if they have prototypes for the Storm 3, because there must be.
Well, I don't know.
He does.
There might be Storm 3. Huh. That's interesting. Man, I've got stories about the Storm, the original. I don't know if I can talk about these. Let me think if anybody would get in trouble. Let's just say, okay, I'm going to tell this story. So coming back to the original BlackBerry Storm, the knee-jerk reaction to that device ever coming to fruition started off like it didn't exist as a planned product from BlackBerry. Apple announced the iPhone. Verizon said, what do you guys have? They freaking hacked together a prototype out of like literally almost like a bar of soap and some other BlackBerry stuff. Jumped on an airplane. Mike L flew to Verizon HQ and said, this is what we're going to build you guys. It's already in progress. and then we got the Storm.
It
was never intended. And I think this is coming back to like this shift to Android and all this stuff. If you want to come back to like one of the decisions made, right? They very consciously at that point in time said BlackBerry OS, an operating system which is literally a two-way pager at its core basic level. If we strip down all the code to like what shipped in version 1, never built to do like Craig, you said it was built for email. It wasn't even built for sending photos or videos or having a smartphone camera tied to it. Never built for touchscreens. It was always built for, input from buttons. And then they decided they were going to make the BBOS compatible with touchscreens. And then the amount of time and effort that went into basically making that OS touchscreen friendly and making it work well. Had they put that energy into something brand new, built from day up to be for multimedia and apps and great things, maybe at that point that was early enough still where they could have, had they built BB10 at that point as their response to the iPhone, they wouldn't have had to go Android and they could have maybe like outgunned at that point. But they didn't. They committed to retrofitting BBOS to become a touchscreen platform instead of building something new. So I slightly revised my earlier answer if they had done it at that point.
The funny thing is Verizon screwed themselves the first time because they refused to carry the iPhone. They were so they didn't have a vision. They were just had so many blinders on that they didn't see the iPhone as being a product they wanted to carry. Very stupid decision they made. And then BlackBerry said, we're going to do this. And of course it failed. And then of course they had to go to Android eventually. I remember the whole Droid sort of.
They sold a lot of Storms. The Storm was a great commercial success.
But it was a lot of people returned them, didn't they?
Yeah.
They sold a lot, and it was not a good long-term success, though.
But you see, then Verizon had to then they had to take their third jump, which was the Droid. Remember the Droid campaign? They paid Lucasfilms to be able to use the name Droid, and they took like a bunch of phones, like the high-level phones from all the companies, and sold them as Droids. Yeah, and
that's why everybody still refers to their phones as Droids. Like, even if it's not a Droid phone.
Verizon put Android on the map with the Droid campaigns, big time.
Yeah.
Okay, more questions. I'm going to zip through some here. Ooh, this one is like, question, was John Chen the best CEO for this transition period? I mean, that's really hard to answer. I think depending who came into the company, you could have had different, if you had like many different potential outcomes for BlackBerry, depending on, decisions made. I think when they put Chen in, where we've ended up today was probably what was going to happen. I don't think he came in loving hardware. He wasn't a product hardware guy, right? He was he came from enterprise software. I think Sybase was the company he was CEO of previously. So that was his world that he knew. Had they put in a CEO who came from a hardware background or, mobile manufacturing background, you would probably still you would have seen more like, let's figure out how to sell phones as a bigger thing. I don't think so it's hard to say. I think, BlackBerry, by the time John Chen came in, was already, BB10 was at market. It didn't have the success it needed, and you had to figure out what to do next. So I think he figured out a lot of things to do next, and best or not is really hard to answer. I don't know, Blaze or Craig, any addition there?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, you can't say whether or not he was the best without having a vision of who else could have, or a vision of what else could have happened in that scenario. So I think the scenario that John Chen created and the position that he placed BlackBerry in now is the best position that they could, be in with the scenario that played out. So all credit to John Chen for making it actually happen.
I'm just trying to find more questions here. I got lost in our chat. So many questions.
42. There's an answer.
42 is the answer.
Mhm.
If only. Blaze, are you seeing any? Oh, somebody said they think we should be the new CEOs of BlackBerry. No, not enough hours in the day. And I'm really excited for BlackBerry Mobile. I want to, we've got a hardware future here for BlackBerry, and I think we talked to Steve on that last podcast. I think he is super passionate, and he's got all the right, the right stuff in terms of how he's approaching thinking about BlackBerry. So we just need to keep, pushing them to make sure they do the things we all love, and I think that we're going to be excited. Too many questions. But that's okay. We'll wrap this up. We're 33 minutes over our 1 hour.
Oh my goodness. Do you want to tell one more? Like, I don't know if you actually can. You might be able to tell the story of like people freaking out over my April 1st BlackBerry Storm post, the April Fool's post.
Oh, wait, what happened? They thought it was real, right?
Yeah, everybody thought it was real, and they all started calling Verizon.
That's right. Okay, what was can you find the article? That was a funny story.
I don't know if I can find the article. I think we actually took it down because it was...
I'll put this on, though. I busted this out. I have a little issue, though. I fired up my playbook. I'm trying to charge it, and it's been on the charger for about 6 hours, and it won't take a charge. Like, it just says 1%, but it hasn't died in the last hour.
That's how mine died.
Playbook.
Or as it used to be known, WebOS, right?
That's right. Yeah, there was some. Oh, Palm. They should really do maybe Trio Central needs to fire up a 15-year, 20-year reunion podcast.
They should. No, seriously, when the playbook came out, it was literally a copy of WebOS.
No, the playbook? It was.
Oh yeah, everything, including the way. I mean, you could hold the two devices next to each other, and they were identical. Identical. You fired up an old Palm Pre or something, one of those things.
They both had like the card metaphor going on.
Yeah, and the icons at the bottom, and the way that the alerts came, and all of it was the same.
Yeah, honestly, I can't remember that clearly enough. I'm trying to think what WebOS looked like again. I used to have it.
Looks like the playbook.
I've got a box here actually with a Palm Pre in it. If I look, I saw it the other day. Interesting.
I tried to fire up my Palm Pre the other day. I've still got one. It's on Sprint. But when you fire them up, they don't turn on Wi-Fi. And so you get stuck because it says, hey, it can't talk to Sprint, so it won't boot up. It's kind of a pain. It's a pity.
All right. Any final questions from the community? I lost a bunch, so I'm going to just look at the newest couple questions, and then we're going to call it a wrap here. And then I'm going to go home. I'm at my office right now. I hope I probably won't be doing any more CrackBerry Kevin YouTube videos until after I am back from Mobile World Congress, but I hope the audience has been watching a few of them. I've been having some fun. I have a very... They're probably been the best CBK videos I've ever done. Somebody said, Kevin, are you in a bomb shelter? No, I'm in a, one of these fancier office buildings. It's got lots of brick and hardwood in it. And I'm on the 5th floor. So definitely not a bomb shelter.
Also, people keep asking what my police box is behind.
It's a TARDIS.
It's a TARDIS from Doctor Who. It's a stand-up TARDIS. So there you go. Move out of the way and you can see it. But that's what it is.
Well, on that note, let's call this a wrap. This was a fun, let's call it a part 1 anniversary podcast, because I think we had some good reminiscing. But I do want to have more guests on the show, including some of our other CrackBerry contributors. I think we need to get some members on too next time. I'd love to have some of our longtime forum members who've been here for a decade tell some of their stories and background of how they got into BlackBerry and how CrackBerry has ruined or improved their lives over the last 10 years. Richard says, great show, guys. That's fun. Shane Anderson, thank you. AK, thank you. Great podcast. Glad you guys enjoyed it. I feel like if you listen to these live, they're good. But for the people who download this in their cars, they're going to be or download the audio tomorrow and listen in their commute. They're not going to be impressed because we rambled a little too much. But.
Yeah, this one was a nice, relaxing Sunday podcast.
That's true. Actually, here, I'm going to try something. I'm going to paste, if anybody in the chat room is on a they're on their computer and they have a Google account. Here's the link to where we're actually recording. So if you click that, I think you'll just show up and you'll be part of the podcast.
That's a terrible idea, Kevin.
Is that a horrible idea?
Well, we'll do it for 5 minutes.
Horrible idea.
I don't know if I can eject you after the fact.
I made myself a moderator.
Just make sure you actually have a camera and you're wearing clothing and your audio is decent.
Now you tell them to wear clothing.
Yeah, wear clothing. Well, I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, just make sure you have a camera and you're wearing clothing. And you have to mute your feed now, Calvin.
Now you tell them to wear clothing.
Yeah, wear clothing. No, mute. I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, Aquazi. Sweet. Camera and you're wearing clothing. And you have to mute your feed, Calvin. Okay, please mute your videos because you're gonna have this new feed. Yes, it depends. Aquazi. Sweet. Dropped off. Okay, I see some camera. I can't see you in your camera though. Mark Davidson. 001 Pilot. Hey! There we go. There's the maker of all the Mercury mock-ups. Boom. 2-pack. Done. Is your audio working?
Muted.
Yeah, you might have to unmute yourself. Quasi. Here we go. We got CrackBerry fans. I love it.
Now, this is a real hangout, Kevin.
So now the question is, why don't you guys have something better to do on your Sunday night? No. Too funny.
That's funny.
Cool. Is anybody's audio working though? Can you feel free to talk?
Hello.
Look at that improved.
Hey, Richard. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Where are you joining us from? What part of the world?
Texas, Dallas.
Sweet.
Nice.
That's awesome. How's the weather there? It's probably nice.
It's all right. Yeah, it was a little humid today, but it hasn't been too bad. Between like 60 and 80 usually.
I love Dallas. I've only been a handful of times, but so what makes you a BlackBerry CrackBerry fan?
Oh man, I've been a huge BlackBerry fan for a very long time. Ever since like high school and stuff, I'd always like get my dad's BlackBerry and play with it.
Right on.
I've really tried to be a loyalist for so long, and then once the ecosystem kind of died, I was a huge supporter of BB10. But once that ecosystem died, it was hard for me to kind of jump back into it. because Android offered so many applications, especially when I was getting my electrical engineering degree. It was easy to download an app through Android to help me with my resistor color coding, or pull up some like text files on my phone. Then it's just that they had the access to more apps. But yeah, I mean, I've been a huge fan. I love the Passport, and the Mercury is something I'm very excited about. So I've been jumping back on CrackBerry. I've been
spread the word.
And I have a DTEC 60 actually, which I love the phone, and I also owned the Priv, and I very, very good. So
sweet. I love it. Like in America, Canada still has pretty good BlackBerry representation in a lot of the cities, right? I guess it's like that, a national pride thing still. But we need to like re-kickstart it in 2017 in America. So I'm excited. Get that Mercury and just rock it hard. And I think that's my goal for this year. I'm like, I love a challenge. So I'm like, let's bring it back. And I think now that it's on Android with good hardware, it's going to be, there's no reason not to buy one, right? There's no longer this trade-off of, okay, you picked a BlackBerry, it's got a great OS like BB10, but you're lacking all these things. And I think, I think now it's
more, especially with the security that they are trying to implement with Android. I just don't know why. I mean, I'm really hoping that, I'm hoping a real big company I hope Google just makes BlackBerry their security. I mean, that would be awesome. They could just put BlackBerry on the map and just be like, hey, do our security for us, make us safe, and there's just a lot of loopholes right now in Android's ecosystem. As far as like security goes, I guess, they just had problems, I guess, over the past, I don't know. Security for Android hasn't really been the best. So
yeah, I think if BlackBerry can work to change, to help harden it and change that perception a little bit, that go a long way. And you never know what happens, right? It's big companies with lots of cash, anything is possible.
Right.
Cool. No, thanks for joining, Richard. We'll see. Shane Anderson, I think he dropped in last, but you said the nicest compliments. So, and you've got a CrackBerry.
Whoa.
Oh my God, you're part of the show. There you go.
I've been around a while.
You can start writing articles. Just email them to Blaze for now, and we'll post them. You're done.
You're gonna have so many people just envying your mug.
Our recruiting process is that straightforward. Where are you in the world situated right now?
Me?
Yeah.
Newfoundland, Corner Brook.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I was you. What's your username? You were on the comments there asking about the time zone?
I was.
Okay, got it. Spantech 101.
Spanch.
No, it's Spanch. Sorry, I am going blind because it's late and that monitor.
Long story. Too long.
So, where does the username Spanch 101 come from?
I'm not getting into that
today. Sounds good.
Shane's actually headed to Alberta in not too long, and I told him to make sure.
Yeah,
I told him to make sure that if he comes through Halifax, come on over, and I'll take him out, and we'll go have
awesome.
it down there.
And then Tupac, the Merc mock-up masters joined us. Where are you based out of?
He's muted.
Well,
there we go.
Here in,
say it again. Sorry, you're a little quiet.
I'm actually here in Denver.
Oh, cool.
So
like Denver.
Right here with Last Man Standing.
Well, 2017, we'll bring it back. So that's cool.
Sounds good.
Right on. Well, should we wind the show down? I like the jump on at the end though. Maybe we should start with that next time. It'll go crazy.
Yeah.
We'll just do a community show. I think we could do that. I mean, that's pretty painless for everybody to just jump on.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I wonder how many we can have before it blows up.
I think it tops out at like 20, I think.
20.
Something like that.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys, for jumping on. And big week coming up, so
yes.
Spread the word. We got, I don't know, MWC is going to be fun. There's going to be some surprises, I think. So
Kevin, when is your, are you going to be doing recording while you're there?
I mean, Blaze is going to be there. Michelle's going to be there. We have a few people there, and then more crew from the Mobile Nations team on the other sites. So I will. I am a horrible video shooter editor by myself these days, but we'll have Mark Gwim there, so I will steal him to do some videos. I think during the keynote live stream, probably Blaze will be doing live blogging.
Okay.
We'll get that going, but we're actually going to be running a live stream, so you guys will be able to watch. We'll see if there's, it's probably easier just to watch it live than it will be to read whatever we're typing.
Yeah.
But we could do a chat and all that kind of stuff at the same time. So that'll come up, and then we'll see what else happens. We'll have the CrackBerry meetup the night before, and I think we can. Steve Sestouli from BlackBerry Mobile said he's going to bring a Mercury there, so I'm pretty sure they're going to let us take photos and things in advance of the event. So I'm thinking maybe that day, we'll probably have some crazy, and we'll all have every other phone with us, so we can start doing more size comparisons and things right off that phone, hopefully. So that'll all be happening like crazy.
Sounds good.
Sweet. And then who joined? We got Rajesh. Is your audio working? I don't know if your audio's on. Well, if not, good to join. And I think let's just wind this bad boy down. So
Let's do it.
Craig, take us out. You know the drill.
I do. Where's my script?
Follow iBanyan on Twitter.
Well, thanks everybody for watching and listening. You can follow me at iBanyan on Twitter, and you can follow Kevin at CrackBerry Kevin. Oh, did I get that right, Kevin?
Yes, you did.
And I forget your one, Chris.
You can follow me on Twitter at Blaze, BLA1ZE.
Woohoo.
Or Z.
Or Z for America. Cool. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We are Barcelona bound after this show, but you will see us next from Barcelona, and we will be back with more old school CrackBerry podcasts and community hangouts in March, because why not? This is too much fun not to do it.
Enjoy, y'all.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.